Hello, online English 101 students. This screencast will cover your first minor essay number 1 writing assignment. I'm starting off on our home screen. I'm going to go ahead and click on content. In this case, it brings us to our Unit 1 Narrative Nonfiction unit. And I am going to click on the minor essay number 1 assignment, and notice it also has a rubric for that assignment. So once we click on those, first point that it brings us to here tells you that it's going to be an MLA style. Please use MLA for all of your assignments this semester. 2 3/4 pages, basically it's saying a minimum of about 3 pages. The rough draft will be due on Saturday, September 9th. The final draft will be due on Saturday, September 16th. So we spent these past 2 weeks by this point identifying elements that writers use to add presence to their essays, things like personal experience, voice, point of view, and verbal patterns. So one of the most common themes of any of these narrative pieces is the theme of a learning experience. It does not need to be limited to school or a classroom setting. All of us have had experiences or touchstone moments in our lives where life itself provided its own challenging curriculum. So that said, a learning experience also does not need to be something sad or tragic. If you happen to read Kevin Murphy's Monday Night at Grumpy's Bar, for example, realizing that great movie experiences can happen outside of a traditional movie theater, or it could be something like Anna Quindlen reflecting on how her kids turned out, sometimes because of and sometimes despite her parenting style. So your assignment is to create a narrative about one of your own learning experiences. This narrative should focus on how the learning experience provided you with new insight, not simply learning a new skill. I caution you against that because then the temptation is to write a process essay that just lists steps rather than telling us a story. Strategies for this assignment. Pick a writer that you've read recently for our reader responses. Think about what made that writer's work especially effective for you. Try to imitate that writer's approach or style. This is a narrative essay. Focus on a single experience to establish possible conflict. Show the development of the conflict and the results of the conflict. Add details that show the story instead of telling us about it. It's that classic show instead of tell. As a narrative, it should contain a story building toward a climactic moment. Be as specific as possible in your use of examples and detail. Use your personal experience to set your essay apart from the narrative of any other student or writer. If you want an A, don't write something you don't care about. That's just getting the job done. Connect a theme to your experience. Your personal motivation will translate into a strong tone of voice. Keep in mind that it takes a while to develop that angle of vision, but it's also what gives voice and personality to writing. So what is your point of view? Where are you in relation to others in the scene or the discussion? Give us a perspective to see through your unique point of view. The rough draft will be graded using these standards. I'd like to see an introduction that sets the context for the essay. The introduction should respond to and incorporate a specific theme. The essay should use personal experience to tell a story to illustrate that theme. The essay has a clear and identifiable tone. The narrative contains descriptive passages that show us key scenes and details. The writer organizes those scenes and details with distinct and purposeful paragraphs. The writer uses consistent verb tense throughout the essay. The writer develops a consistent point of view throughout the essay. The essay moves the reader at an appropriate pace from start to finish. And finally, the essay is a completed draft of at least 2 3/4 pages, uses a legible 12-point font, and has 1-inch margins. As far as fonts go, I typically prefer either Arial or Times New Roman. Your rough draft will be scored using these standards out of 20 points. There are also 2 sample essays within this document. The first one is from a student writer where she talks about what she learned from the process of raising horses. Notice we have an MLA header, your name, my name, class, and date, and then she launches into the essay. She sets up the background and the context of the essay, and then she concludes with the thesis. For all the times I have come back from the barn in tears and frustration, I have come back triple times elated or simply content from understanding how the horse can improve me. So she sets this up as a learning experience with her identified topic. The second sample essay is actually one that I wrote for you for this course. This is the learning experience that I had as a sophomore in college. So again, we establish our background, narrow the focus, and then set up the essay as a learning experience. There are some common issues I would like you to avoid when it comes to interpreting your rough draft grades, for example. 18 to 20 is typically, it means well done, just some minor revisions. 15 to 17, which would be roughly 75 to an 85%, indicates that there's some issues, a few sections to polish. Anything less than a 15 means that there are some significant structural issues or perhaps a misunderstanding of the assignment. Revision will need to start with an outline, and it would be a good idea then to contact me about revising the essay. Review the final draft grading guide. I'll show you that here in just a second. Make sure to avoid general commentary. Let the strength of the scenes and the narrative portion show the points that might be told to the audience through general commentary. Show the emotions rather than just telling us about them. Make sure that this is a narrative essay. It's not a definition essay. It's not a process analysis. It's not a cause and effect. It's not arguing. If it's instructive, it's not a narrative essay. If it lacks a story developed over multiple paragraphs, not simply within each paragraph, that we could outline on a plot diagram, for example, it is not a narrative essay. Make sure to slow down and show specific scenes. If the event is not relevant to the narrative, it likely does not need to be mentioned in the essay. Avoid just giving us a list of events. Develop no more than 2 specific events. The real learning experience should be the longest and most developed part of the short story. The language should serve the narrative. Language that is overdone, too flowery, too inflated, old-fashioned, or full of slang distracts the audience from the narrative. Distracting language can also add an unintended campy or satirical tone. Get out of the way of the story and let it tell itself. Take out all forms of you in the essay. Please speak to the reader, not at the reader. This, by the way, goes for all of your essays this semester. Please do not use forms of you unless you are using a direct quote or unless you are using dialogue in the essay. Sticky note starting quotes. I know it's really tempting just to start off with a famous quote, but unless you are actually integrating them and developing them through the introduction and then coming back to that opening quote at the conclusion, then it feels like a real cheap and easy way of starting the essay. Semicolons and colons are not the same thing. There's a link there that you can use to get some quick tips on grammar and semicolons. Since your name is on the essay, things like I think, I feel, I believe, to me, and in my opinion do not need to be in your essay. They're automatically embedded into each sentence in a personal narrative. Be careful of the word truly. Is the sentence actually any less true without it? It's an unnecessary filler word. And along those lines, it's not on here, but also be careful of the phrase, little did I know. I've seen essays where students repeat that phrase over and over again, and as a reader, if you hear the phrase, little did I know, 10 times in a story, then let's be honest, we start to wonder what exactly the writer did know. Avoid plurals in the introduction, especially in the last sentence. Make the thesis as focused as possible. Finally, start and end the essay in first person. Stay in it from start to finish. Avoid the temptation to create what I call an after-school special ending, where suddenly we try to find the moral and the conclusion. The essay will be graded according to this rubric. So notice we start off with purpose and rhetorical situation. Simply put, did you write a narrative essay? Then we move on to development of the narrative. It should be focused on original and specific actions. Go beyond obvious details. The introduction should set it up. The conclusion responds to and reflects the outcome. The pace flows. Presence and personality. Engage the reader with natural and thought-provoking language, vivid verbs, and descriptive language. Strong and appropriate tone enhances the narrative. Render your ideas in lively and thoughtful prose. And finally, especially when it comes to that final draft, make sure to do some final edits. look at the grammar and mechanics, and let's see some evidence of careful editing and proofreading. If you have any questions, let me know.